This MMA30 segment is powered by The Gun Store. Next time you're in Las Vegas, if you want to shoot a real machine gun, do it at The Gun Store at 2900 East Tropicana.
1 week ago today, in Denver, Colorado, the place where the UFC put on their very first event many years ago, the UFC returned in a big way. An entertaining fight card. Did you find the card to be entertaining all the way through or just bits and pieces?
All the main card, except for one fight, in my opinion, was very entertaining. The Travis Browne fight and Rob Broughton, that fight kind of lacked for me. But everything else, I mean, it started off with a bang. Diaz and Gomi just set the pace right off the bat, and Nate Diaz just showcasing, his amazing stand-up. And seeing him back at 155 pounds, it really got the night started for me.
Yeah, Nate Diaz looked good out there, and Takanori Gomi just had no answer.
Looked good. He looked great. That's the best performance That's the best performance. That's the best performance Nate Diaz has put on in the octagon to date.
No, Takanori Gomi was just a pathetic opponent.
See,
yes, he was. No. Takanori Gomi had the world's worst game plan. His game plan was eat 25 shots from Nate Diaz and try to throw one Hail Mary. At no point did he even set up a single power shot. All he was doing was cocking his right hand back and hoping it would land. Nate Diaz looked like he had the best performance of his career because he was up against Takanori Gomi. I'm not going to take anything away from Nate Diaz, but you also can't overblow the fact that this fight was lopsided.
I'm saying it was the best performance. It wasn't the best opponent that Nate Diaz fought, but it was the best performance put on by Nate Diaz. There's a big difference there, Dave.
I think there's a big difference between the best performance and a lopsided performance. He went out there and he beat someone easily.
Gomi was arguably the former number one.
Back in 1994?
He was, at one point in time.
Yeah, Chuck Liddell and Tank Abbott were also at the top
that
of
was
their
my
game.
point that I was going to get to. Gomi's style of fighting, the sprawl and brawl type of fighting, that no longer has a place in modern-day mixed martial arts. Yes, they're exciting fighters, and we saw that later on in the card as well when we saw Quentin Jackson fight Jon Jones, which we'll get to in just a minute. But that type of fighting just has no place in modern-day mixed martial arts when you have guys like Jon Jones and George St. Pierre and Nate Diaz and Nick Diaz especially.
Well, you're making my point for me. It was a lopsided fight. Takanori Gomi, unfortunately, just doesn't have what it takes to be a superstar in mixed martial arts anymore. He never will again.
Gomi has a good chin, but Nate Diaz, just lit him up, man. Takanori Gomi is a dangerous lightweight. He is not the upper echelon of the lightweight division, which I think Nate Diaz, I'm glad to see him back in that division because I think he has the opportunity to advance to that upper echelon in the lightweight division. He only has problems with guys like Frankie Edgar and guys like Gray Maynard. Really good wrestlers are the guys that he has problems with.
And those are still competitive fights.
You're exactly right. I'll agree with you 100% on that. I think the fight against Gray could have gone. I gave it to Gray, but had a few things gone Nate's way, that fight easily could have been his.
The only real embarrassment, in my opinion, on Nate Diaz's record in the past 5 years is when he lost to Joe Stevenson. He lost that decision back at the Ultimate Fighter 9, and that was back in 2009. That was to Joe Stevenson. Joe Stevenson hadn't really tapered off at that point, but Nate Diaz is certainly a better fighter, in my opinion, than Joe Stevenson.
That fight happens today. Nate Diaz wins.
No question about it. He had 2 losses back-to-back before his win over Takanori Gomi at UFC 135, but he was fighting at 170 pounds. He doesn't belong at welterweight. He belongs at 155 pounds.
He's way too small to be fighting at 170. I mean, his advantages at 170 pounds or 155 pounds don't translate. He's not stronger. He's not that much taller, and he doesn't have the reach advantage that he has at 155 pounds. At 155 pounds, he's damn near Jon Jones. He's the Jon Jones of the 155-pound division almost.
Easy, Tiger.
In terms of reach, that's what I'm saying.
Okay.
Not like in terms of overall.
Skill, yeah.
Nate Diaz is a tough guy, though. I think
he's a tough guy.
In the next 2 years, Nate Diaz will have a title shot.
If he can stay disciplined enough. That's the thing. When you're fighting at that high of a level, you've got to be really disciplined, and we've seen serious discipline problems with the Diaz brothers. Whether or not Nate can hold it together, only time will tell. But I think it's safe to say that Takanori Gomi has one fight left in the UFC. That's going to be when the UFC goes over to Japan in February. He'll get a crack on that card because he's got a following over in Japan. The UFC doesn't have a lot of Japanese stars. It's an opportunity for him to go out there and put on a big fight in his home country. And if he loses, then he's out. If he wins, maybe he gets another fight or two.
Yeah, it's kind of like what they were doing with Big Dog. Everybody thought he was out on the outs. They put him down in Brazil, had an amazing performance. I think Gomi deserves one more shot. I think he absolutely deserves one more shot. And in Japan, like you said, they need to stack that card so that possibly we can see the rebirth of mixed martial arts in Japan. I mean, Dream and Shudo and Deep, they've all just seen serious declines over the past few years, and I think
none of them are going to survive. None of those promotions are going to survive.
You're absolutely right. Well, I mean, Deep will, but they don't have the star power that the others do.
Looking at UFC 135, there was a couple of heavyweight fights. Our opinions differ on one of these fights, and we'll get to that in a moment, but we can both agree that the Travis Browne and Rob Broughton fight was a disappointment. Travis Browne won the fight 30-27 across all the judges' scorecards. Broughton made an effort in all the rounds, just couldn't really get anything going, didn't have a game plan that was going to be effective against Travis Browne. What was really most disappointing, though, is that this was supposed to be the big coming out party for Travis Browne. Everyone's like, you know what? This guy, he's got the makings of a superstar. He went out there and knocked out Stefan Struve. He's an exciting young prospect. I mean, he's 30 years old, but still, he's got a lot of fight in him. He's an undefeated fighter, and his only loss, or even, not a loss, his only draw on his entire record is against a top guy like Chet Congo. So Travis Browne has the makings of a potential superstar at heavyweight. I don't know if I can agree with that after I saw his fight against Rob Broughton.
Absolutely not, and I'm not just hating to hate, because haters are going to hate, but I'm not doing that right now. Travis Browne, he's going to be He's going to be a gatekeeper. He's going to be a guy that they put up-and-comers who are really moving up the heavyweight division against. You know, I wouldn't mind seeing like a Brendan Schaub versus Travis Browne next, but I think Schaub wrecks Browne all day long. I have not been impressed by Browne. I think he's a nice guy, but to be honest, that fight against Congo, he lost that fight. The only reason Congo, that fight even ended in a draw is because Congo was pulling his shorts, and he got a point taken away.
Yeah, I don't know if I want to quite relegate Travis Browne to just being a gatekeeper at this point. He fought Rob Broughton. That was not an impressive fight. His KO over Stefan Struve was impressive. I agree with you on the Chet Congo assessment. He did TKO James McSweeney, and before that, almost all of his wins, with the exception of 2, have come via KO or TKO. I think this kid does have potential, but whether or not he'll ever realize it, I don't know. The fact that he showed that he could not go a full 3 rounds in the UFC without being embarrassingly tired, that tells me something.
Who does he beat, or who does he even have the potential to beat, who's in the top 6 right now?
And
that's why I say
like
gatekeeper.
To see Travis Browne versus Brendan Schaub.
But Brendan Schaub's not in the top 10.
Yeah, I don't know if I can agree with that.
I don't know, man. I don't have Schaub.
The UFC's heavyweight division is still relatively thin.
Except for there's going to be there are people who are coming over from Strikeforce. I think Daniel Cormier has just skyrocketed himself up into the top 10. You cannot deny that Josh Barnett is arguably maybe number 5 in the world in the heavyweight.
Josh Barnett's legit. I'll give you that.
You know, Alistair Overeem's up there. You got Brock Lesnar. You got Junior Dos Santos. You got Cain Velasquez. Who does this guy even? I mean, can you even think of if Travis Browne can even stand? No,
I don't think that he beats anyone in the top 10, but I think that the guys that are on the very bottom of that list in the top 10, guys like I said,
Nogueira,
Brendan Schaub, like Nogueira, Brendan Schaub. I mean, like just right there. I think those are interesting fights. I don't know if you have to make him mad. I think Travis Browne needs to go out there and beat up somebody that has a name and do it convincingly in order to be worthy of those shots. But I still like Travis Browne's fighting style. I like the fact that he is a heavyweight that does have a habit of going out there and knocking people out. Rob Broughton, unfortunately for him, he's a very tough guy that had no name, absolutely no name, when he fought him. You know, I mean, his last, 5 fights he'd won in a row, and he'd won 6 of his last 8 or something like that, if I remember correctly. And then he went out there and, he tested Travis Browne, but didn't have a game plan to actually beat Travis Browne. End of the day, the Travis Browne fight, unfortunately, didn't work out for Travis Browne and what he needed to do to catapult himself to being a real contender.
Yeah, he needed to have a performance like he did against Stefan Struve. And I think beating Stefan Struve, we're going to see against Pat Barry, I think Stefan Struve's going to get exposed, and he's not going to be the superstar heavyweight that a lot of people are projecting him to be.
Ben Rothwell, Mark Hunt, Mahoney, I think that your opinion is swayed on this one because you bet on Mark Hunt and it panned out for you. I thought this was a stinker of a fight, an embarrassment.
See, I came home after I was unable to watch the fights live, and my roommate was at home, and I had DVR'd the fights, and he's like, dude, you got to see this fight. It was insane. You got to watch it. And I was like, which fight was it? He's like, the Ben Rothwell, Mark Hunt fight.
Insanely boring?
I don't think insanely boring. What? It was 2 warriors going at it,
It was
man.
a snooze fest. They gassed out after 3 minutes.
The first 2 rounds were great.
Ben
man.
Rothwell looked fat and out of shape.
You are crazy. Ben Rothwell looked better than he's looked in years. Do you not remember what Ben Rothwell looked like
kidding me.
when he fought Gilbert Yvel or when he fought Cain Velasquez? Ben
Rothwell.
Ben Rothwell looked great for Ben Rothwell.
Look,
Ben Rothwell.
You can't say someone looks great for being themselves.
Yes, you can.
Ben Rothwell, at the end of the day, looked fat, messy, and like he completely lacked a game plan to go out there and beat Mark Hunt. Mark Hunt just happened to not gas out quite as quickly as Ben Rothwell. That fight, I thought, was an embarrassment.
I disagree with you, and I think Dana White disagrees with you as well. After the fight at the post-fight press conference, Dana White praised Mark Hunt, and he said he's proud to have Mark Hunt in the UFC now. And I think he's right. Mark Hunt, he might not be a guy who sets the world on fire, but he's an exciting fighter, in my opinion.
I think it's beyond saying that he doesn't set the world on fire. With this win over Ben Rothwell, he's now batting a whopping 500 in mixed martial arts. He's now 7-7.
Yeah, but look who he's fought. He fought Manhoof, who's one of the most exciting strikers who just out-cardio him. The same thing
Manhoof's a middleweight.
The same thing with Mousasi. He also fought Alistair Overeem.
Mousasi's a light heavyweight. You're talking about a dude that weighs 264 pounds, and he's losing to guys that weigh 100 pounds less than him.
He's also fought Fedor, Josh Barnett, and Alistair Overeem.
100 pounds less, Mahoney. Mark Hunt, look, I'm not going to take anything away from him. He won the fight, but he didn't win the fight because he's a great fighter. He won the fight because Ben Rothwell's a fat, out-of-shape mess.
I don't know, man. I thought Rothwell looked good for Rothwell. I absolutely did,
That's
man.
such a stupid thing
That's
to say.
not a stupid thing to say.
It is. Ben Rothwell shouldn't be in the UFC if he can't get in shape and fight
I think
for 15
that will be his last fight in the UFC.
If he can't fight for 15 minutes, he doesn't belong in the UFC.
Well, maybe not. I think he might have one more fight left.
And it's that fight. It still blows my mind how that fight ended up on pay-per-view to begin with, because it just has stinker written all over it.
Well, who else were you going to put on there, though?
Put the Tony Ferguson, Aaron Riley fight.
Who cares
on there.
about Tony? At least Mark
Who cares
Hunt
about
and
Ben Rothwell?
Ben Rothwell and Mark Hunt have names.
No, they don't.
They do have names.
Dude, Ben Rothwell could walk through the UFC Fan Expo and no one would know who the guy is.
That's untrue.
It's not untrue.
That is untrue.
No one knows who.
And Mark Hunt is a legend.
Name.
Mark Hunt is a legend of the sport.
A legend to guys like you that own every single UFC and Pride DVD ever printed.
There's still a good core base of hardcore fans.
I'm just saying, dude. Mark Hunt is not a superstar.
He's not a superstar,
you could
but
do
he
a
is
signing with
he is
Mark
a legend.
Hunt down the street and 4 people would show up.
But he's also a K1 legend as well.
3 of your friends that you forced to come.
You know what? Go look at Mark Hunt versus Ray Cefa, one of the most exciting fights in K1 history, man.
And we're not talking about K1.
But Mark Hunt has
talking about
K1.
the UFC.
He's got a K1 pedigree and a mixed martial arts background.
Then
That's
why
all
couldn't
I'm
he
saying.
knock out Ben Rothwell?
Because Ben Rothwell has a chin of bricks. That's why.
Apparently, he also has a belly of bricks. He looked fat and out of shape. Let's move on.
Okay.
Co-main event, Matt Hughes, Josh Koscheck. Unfortunately, I think this is the last time that we see Matt Hughes inside the UFC cage. He's a Hall of Famer. He got knocked out by Josh Koscheck at the very end of the first round, 4 minutes and 59 seconds. He actually came out with a pretty good game plan. He kind of surprised Josh Koscheck.
He looked good. He kept jabbing the broken, Koscheck had the broken orbital from the GSP fight, and he kept jabbing it. He kept working it, and it looked like it was starting to agitate Josh Koscheck, but Koscheck just... this is what we said was going to happen. He's just too good on his feet for Matt Hughes.
He's a younger, much quicker, more dynamic fighter.
And he's got power, man. That's one of the things that Hughes just doesn't have on his feet. Hughes has never had power. The most power we've ever seen from Hughes on his feet when he caught Ricardo Almeida, a year or so ago. But Koscheck has the power to knock a lot of dudes out, and I thought he looked good, and Josh Koscheck proves that, he's back, and, this is a fight. I think this was a great fight for him to tune up to getting into the upper echelon of the welterweight division again. I think Koscheck could be, maybe 1 or 2 more fights away from another title shot, depending on who he fights.
It's just such a bad spot for Josh Koscheck.
Because GSP.
Because he got wrecked by GSP, and that's the problem with the welterweight division all the way around. All right, talking about the main event, because this is all related. Jon Jones, Rampage Jackson. Jon Jones goes out there and destroys Rampage Jackson. Mm-hmm. Some people say, oh, well, if Rampage woulda, coulda, shoulda caught him, doesn't matter. Rampage Jackson went out there, had absolutely nothing for Jon Jones. Jon Jones dominated every round. Finally, in the 4th round, he ends up choking him out with the rear naked choke. First time that Rampage has been finished since, what year was that?
Since Sakuraba.
Sakuraba.
And there's even talks that was
Yeah, but look, this is the
that
first.
That was a fight in Japan.
Yeah,
it was
that was
early
in
Rampage's career.
That was a different time.
Yeah,
Jon Jones goes out there and demolishes Rampage Jackson. So who really stands a chance against Jon Jones?
Rashad.
We know that Rashad Evans is the next challenge for him, but if he steamrolls through Rashad, and then let's say Dan Henderson beats Shogun, which I think he will.
I think he will too.
If Jon Jones then steamrolls Dan Henderson, you're in almost the same predicament already because you've got this dynamic fighter who is just going out there and pulverizing everyone. And Dana White said at the post-fight press conference, if Jon Jones continues to do this in the light heavyweight division, already now they've talked about heavyweight.
Yeah, I don't think that's out of the question. I think there's, outside of Dan Henderson and outside of Rashad, there's another fight there in Lyoto Machida. I think that would be an interesting fight just because styles make fights. And, even though Machida is, we saw his performance against Shogun, he got caught there. Jones does not have the power that Shogun has in his hands.
Yeah,
I think the styles would be interesting because you look at how long Jones's reach is, and you look at the kind of the karate style, distance fighting that we've seen from Lyoto Machida in the past. So I think that could be an interesting fight, depending on how Machida performs in his next fight.
Can I tell you that I'm a little bit less interested in that fight now than I was, because Quentin Rampage Jackson is a counter striker, and so is Lyoto Machida. And we saw Jones have a great game plan against Rampage Jackson's counter fighting style, in the sense that he just used his reach and stayed on the outside and picked him apart.
The difference between Machida, though, and Rampage is that Machida has a lot more tools in his arsenal. We're actually going to see some kicks from Machida. Yeah, we saw 2 leg kicks from Rampage during that fight, but I think we could see some interesting striking and some interesting angles presented by Lyoto Machida. It just depends. Like I said, it all depends on his next performance. He looked amazing against Randy, one of the best kicks that we've seen since the Anderson Silva kick. But Jones has already beaten 3 out of the top 10 heavyweights.
Yeah.
Or light heavyweights. Bader was, in the top 10. Shogun was the champion, and Quentin Jackson was, he was right up there as well.
Sure.
So it's if he beats Rashad convincingly, and then Dan Henderson. You're right. Heavyweight it is, but I think he's going to have some serious problems in the heavyweight division.
I know, but they're interesting challenges, and that's what I like.
I still would like to see Anderson Silva versus Jon Jones. But
oh, man, that would be
the best fight of the year.
Great fight.
Yeah.
This MMA30 segment is powered by The Gun Store. Next time you're in Las Vegas, if you want to shoot a real machine gun, do it at The Gun Store at 2900 East Tropicana.